So our opponent has kept, and we are also going to keep. So decent starting hand. We're on the draw. So we've got a lot of ramp elements, and it looks like our opponent is playing an aggressive deck. We see that Inventor's Apprentice there. So that's a little bit worrisome, especially with this hand. But no artifact yet, it looks like. So hopefully no second land. Is that asking for too much? So we're gonna get our waste here, and we're gonna set up for one in the rig. So okay, no second land. Our wish has been granted. So let's reveal a forest here, and go ahead and ruin in their wake, and set up our mana nicely. So it's interesting that our opponent would keep a one land hand like this, but I guess Inventor's Apprentice is a very strong card. So that is definitely true. And here's an Ishkana. So we've got some options here. Our opponent's clearly stumbling, so we're gonna get some time here to set up. We can play anything except for the Ishkana. I kind of like and believe it's correct here to play the Hedron Archive, just because next turn it's gonna allow us to have so many more options. Just with this 2 additional mana that the Archive provides. And alright, so our opponent's a little bit mana screwed, which is definitely sad for them, but good for us. So we've got a nice turn we can set up here. So it involves playing our second Archive, and then playing Tireless Tracker. Then we go, okay, land, get a clue, play Ruin in their wake, get another clue. So we're really just kind of completely ramping out exactly how we want to be. And this is how you draw it up. You draw it up from our deck. Even though we don't have that many threats, we don't have Delirium yet, we can still play our game. And so our opponent has finally got there with that second land, and that's going to allow our opponent to play this Smuggler's Copter. So the Smuggler's Copter is pretty good here. It's going to allow these Inventor's Apprentice to attack, and the question is, do we actually just bite the bullet here and block? So one argument to making this block is that it will, if we block, we're going to have another card type in our graveyard. We can then sacrifice Hedron Archive and have Ishkana online. So I think the safest play here is actually just blocking, trading a tracker, which we definitely wanted the tracker. Okay, so here's a Nissa. Does that change our line? Not sure that it does. We still want to get Delirium, which means we would have to sacrifice one of the Hedron Archives. We could also just play Nissa, but I like just going for this line of sacrificing an Archive, and we picked up a Spatial Contortion as well, which is pretty nice. And now we can play Ishkana and get its minions, the spiders, along with it. So we're in a nice spot here. We've got these 2 clues which we can use to draw cards. We've got ourselves to Delirium, even though it meant losing our tracker. Now our opponent does have 7 cards, so one of the other reasons why I like that block is we don't want to get burned out. Yes, we're at 13, but our opponent's got 7 cards in their hand. We know that could mean Fiery Temper, that could mean Unlicensed Disintegration, could mean Incendiary Flow. So lots of cards that our opponent is representing here. And there's a Scrapheap Scrounger. So we're just going to sacrifice a clue. No need to do anything more here. And interestingly, picked up double Descend Upon the Sinful there. Not exactly what we wanted, to be honest, but we'll take it nonetheless. So I like sacrificing the clue here. And not what we wanted, but we can still just play out our Nissa here. And then the question becomes, what do we do with the Nissa once it's on the battlefield? But let's get it on the battlefield first. I think we want to tick it up. And just getting in for 5 seems like a strong play here. So the one unfortunate thing about playing Green-White Delirium is that we don't have as easy access to black mana for the activated ability of Ishkana, so we're not able to drain our opponent out as easily, but we do have enough on board that our opponent is just going to concede there. So we're seeing a black-red aggressive deck. Pretty typical black-red aggro is what it looks like. Our opponent stumbled, and we were able to capitalize. But we're going to be on the draw, and we got to be a little bit more realistic about our expectations here. So I like boarding in a lot of the early interaction. Natural state, our opponent could have a card like Key to the City. We already saw Smuggler's Copter. And if natural state gets rid of a Scrapheap Scrounger, that's also, we'll live with that. So we're gonna look at potentially boarding in a lot of this removal, and Linvala. We definitely want our Linvalas. So since we're boarding in a lot of early interaction, we have to board cards out. I actually don't like the Servants very much against this deck. We know about cards like Fiery Temper. Probably our opponent's got Unlicensed Disintegration, stuff like that. So the Servants are not that great. We also may want Stasis Snare. So because of that, I like actually just shaving on a lot of our creatures because our opponent's going to have cards like Fiery Temper to just get rid of them. So even a card like Tireless Tracker can come out here. And we're just kind of loading up on removal, with the plan being to just stop our opponent first and then win with something like an Emrakul. Our opponent is going to have a difficult time dealing with Emrakul. So that is still our way to win. But since we have these 2-mana removal spells, we don't necessarily want to be playing Ruin in their wake on turn 2. So we can shave on some Ruins, cut a Traverse, and just kind of shave all around. So do some shaving here. And this looks pretty reasonable. So let's go with this configuration. We do have to still leave in our Planeswalkers because we need a way to win the game still. And here is a little bit of an awkward draw because we've just got multiple big spells. We're not playing that many big spells in our deck, but we do have 2 of them. I still think it's a keep. We've got interaction, we've got lands, so we'll play with it here and see where this hand takes us. Interestingly, there's a Haumar Battlements into a Bomat Courier to get things going here, and it looks like our opponent may have misclicked there and not attacked with the Courier, so that's a little bit awkward. We would like our opponent to play optimally, but it's probably just going to mean our opponent missed 1 damage because we can natural state away the Courier, which we're probably just going to want to do here because it's still just a really hard to deal with card for our deck. So we'll see what our opponent does past the turn here. But yeah, especially seeing this tap land, I like just killing the Courier. And then we're going to untap here. So our opponent does have at least 2 lands here, but we're able to get rid of our opponent's first play. And you know what? it was just 1 damage that our opponent missed by not attacking with it. Because we were going to natural state it either way. That card can get out of hand really pretty easily. And the Inventor's Apprentice, we're not as keen to immediately get rid of it. We're going to hold up the Stasis Snare, see what our opponent plays, but we're not necessarily just going to immediately Stasis Snare the Apprentice. And it's going to be a Fleetwheel Cruiser, so that we are going to want to Stasis Snare. Not only are we going to get rid of the Fleetwheel Cruiser, but we're also going to shrink down the Inventor's Apprentice. So this is kind of what we want to be doing against the red-black deck, is just stemming the early bleeding and working our way towards our late game. Does that mean we're going to win this game? Who knows? There's still a lot of games to be played. We could get a Stasis Snare off of this, but actually we really do need lands here pretty desperately, so I like just taking the waste. And now we're going to have 5 lands next turn for our Nissa. So we'll see if our opponent just gives this Inventor's Apprentice haste. That is a play that our opponent has available to them. So I will say that it's pretty likely our opponent has a significant chunk of removal in hand. Which is definitely scary. So we drew Ishkana, but we just don't have Delirium yet. So I think we're kind of forced into running out our Nissa. It's not the best play, that's for sure. So we're just going to make the 5/5, pass the turn, hope for no unlicensed disintegration. And then we'll be able to block here. So if our opponent doesn't have the disintegration, we're in pretty good shape. Although there's a Copter, so that's also pretty good. So if our opponent also has some type of removal, that's going to be bad as well. But alright, we're getting the turn passed to us, so that's definitely good news. So the draw step was Hedron Archive. We've actually got a pretty cool play that we can make here. So we can go ahead and make, even though we don't have the additional land, we can go ahead and make the emblem with Nissa to get another card type in our graveyard. So I am going to do that, and that's going to mean 4 card types in our graveyard now that the Nissa emblem has been made. And then we can follow up with Ishkana here. And it's going to be pretty hard for our opponent to get through this, especially considering we've got a lot of gasoline left. And this is one of the issues that the aggressive decks run into in this format. Once the early stream of creatures is dealt with, we were able to deal with the Bomat Courier and the Fleetwheel Cruiser. The deck suddenly becomes a lot less powerful, and the late game is definitely a lot worse than ours. But it looks like our opponent just feels obligated to attack in here. And here's an Alms of the Vein. So we are in a little bit of danger, not too much danger here in terms of getting burned out. And we do want to get rid of the Copter, so I like putting the Ishkana in front of that. And then we can put some spiders in front of one of the Inventor's Apprentices. And what this block is going to do is it's going to force our opponent to have something, or else these blocks are just going to be very good for us. So we like how that turned out. We're not really too upset with the Fiery Temper there to finish off the Ishkana. And we just hit one of our best cards here. It's Evolving Wild. So we're going to get basically to draw 2 cards here. So we get the first card. Now we can sacrifice the Evolving Wilds to get a Forest. Nissa then triggers again. So we can draw another card. And that's pretty absurd. Now we're at the point where we can Emrakul next turn. We basically have everything going for us. So no real reason to attack. The only real chance our opponent has is to try to burn us out, but that is pretty unlikely to happen. So we've got 8 mana, 5 card types in graveyard. Exactly what we want for Emrakul. We have Spatial Contortion, which we can use. It looks like our opponent is going to make some attacks here. So I do think we want to Spatial Contortion here, just to get rid of one of the Inventor's Apprentices, and we can block defensively on the Scrounger. So we are going to end up taking 2 here, but I think at 10 we're still pretty safe. And once again, we are going to be playing Emrakul this turn. We're also going to be able to draw 2 cards off of this Evolving Wild. So the Nissa Emblem is pretty much most of the time game over once you really start getting it going. And yep, there's going to be the concession. There's no need for us to cast Emrakul apparently. Our opponent's had enough, so that's going to do it.